an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 3, Episode 1, The Tale of the Seven Keys. In this episode, everything is pretty damn depressing without magic, as it turns out, and I was reminded that there are a lot of businesses that relied on it, which have now gone under. And it seems that maybe there is a back door to getting it back again, but it requires a key, or 7 keys, as the case may be. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. I just watched this actually right before I started the recording, which sometimes I like to be able to double watch things, but this show tends to be so high impact, I guess is the word I want, that I'm always really eager to talk about it immediately after watching it. So I tried it this morning and I feel pretty good about this decision. This episode is a lot. I feel like it's a really nice setup that the premiere of season 2 didn't quite do for me. Because season 2, when that started, it felt like they were still trying to clean up the mess of season 1. And that's not to say they're not cleaning up a mess here from season 2 because magic is gone. But when I say clean up a mess, I don't mean within the plot. I mean the writers. I just feel like this has the vibe of something a little bit more organized. And I trust more this time around that they know where they're going with this in a way that it didn't really feel like they knew during season 2's premiere. So, and also, I did like the fact that at the end of season 1, the big bad hasn't been defeated quite yet. So I was here for the fact that things got drawn out more. But when I look back at the way that he winds up being defeated and how that all goes down, it doesn't feel like it was worth drawing out in the end. So take that how you will. But yeah, so this episode begins. We have the, first of all, the scene with Quentin and Julia, and they are sitting trying to get her magic to do anything because she showed him that she can still do a couple small things, but they don't seem to be able to settle on a spell that is really effective. She can manipulate smoke, she can make sparks fly, but it's not like there's any particular useful thing. She can't light a candle, manipulating smoke. That could come in handy depending on the situation, but probably not very often. So they're just trying, and more than just trying to figure out a spell that she can do, they're trying to figure out if there's a pattern to what she can do that could lead them to understanding why she's able to do it at all, and then maybe track that back down to the source. And it doesn't seem like that's going to work out. He has a suspicion that the magic she has is somehow related to her proximity to gods. And she says that that's a really nice way to put it, because really what it's implied is that whatever, the fact that having Reynard's sperm inside her was what gave her a god power before, he thinks that this is maybe leftover. Also, she thinks maybe it's a smudge that when she came in contact with Persephone, maybe a little bit just rubbed off on her. And, either of those would be explanations that I would accept. I wouldn't love them. They're not that fun, but I would be yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense. But it just feels like there has to be something else going on here. And I just can't imagine quite what that is. So they decide that they're going to really focus on this. And when they are discussing their next step in trying to track down where magic has gone or where they can go to get it back, Josh comes downstairs and overhears their conversation and is like, oh, you know what? I know a guy that you should talk to. And that guy turns out to be Bacchus. Now, guys, is this actor who plays Bacchus from something? Because he was like extremely familiar to me, and yet I could not place him at all. And it wasn't even like he was familiar, like, I know I've seen his face before. I'm almost wondering if he doesn't just look like somebody so much that he seems familiar, even though I don't know him. But Bacchus has the vibe of like a Van Wilder. Like, he seems like a dude who is still in college and throwing college parties, even though like he's low-key too old to be doing this anymore. And it's like edging on a little bit pathetic at this point. And it is really fun to me how much he calls Quentin a buzzkill, a vibe killer. That's what he says. Because, guys, there is nothing sadder and less fun than Quentin trying to be fun. Oh, damn. Quentin, buddy, sweetie. Oh my God, you are not good at this. Like, that moment when he like kneels in front of Bacchus and has the shots and is yelling shots and it's like, I worship at your feet. Guys, I just like, how many people does Bacchus have to deal with that are like this? That like really want to be part of things, but just like don't quite know how to let loose and just like let it happen. Because I understand that Quentin is here with like a fucking focus. Like he's got a mission that he wants to accomplish. But he seems to feel like they need to like accomplish that ASAP. And I feel like if he had let things sort of slide along a little bit, that they still could have gotten to where they do without it being quite so irritating. Also, I don't know how you guys feel about this. Was Bacchus's party like a little tamer than you thought it was going to be? Is it just because we have been hanging out with Margo and Eliot? Because I just thought there would be more. I thought it would be like really overwhelming and that there'd be just a lot of like sex happening in every corner. And almost like, I guess what I'm thinking of is how, according to like a lot of the stories, that the people that he was with would kind of go into a frenzy and sometimes wind up like getting in fights and killing each other. And so I kind of expected the vibe of this party to be edging on a little bit of violence, like fun, but with a feeling of like this could go left any second. And I was really surprised at how like sort of chill it was, you know, everybody was just like laid out on drugs or making out or just like dancing. And it was very like kind of a regular party. We'll get back to that. Let's talk about Penny real quick because Penny's stuff is sort of put out of the way early on. Penny was sent to pick up a book from this guy's basement. This dude who we don't get a name for him. He's got a really interesting accent that I couldn't place. And this dude's book is way, way overdue. And apparently this guy somehow like caught Penny and has him tied up in the basement. And this is a nice little exposition scene. Because first of all, I would like to note that Penny is wearing a tie. Things have changed. He is very formal looking. But yeah, he says, you were ignoring our requests. That book is overdue. And this dude really legit thinks that there is something more sinister to Penny being here. Like, he doesn't really buy this story, which I find really interesting that there are people interacting with the magical library and taking books out who don't understand how serious they take this. Like, you would think that if you sign out a book from here, like, for example, when you get your magical library card, I would expect there to be a disclaimer of just like, if your book is overdue, we reserve the right to enter your home to procure said book at any point. I would think that would be something that like people would know was a possibility. But this guy isn't exactly like in his entire right mind either. So there is a possibility that they do have that waiver, and this guy just signed it, did not read it, and then got angry about it afterward, which certainly happens. People sign shit without reading it all the time. So, you know, he asks what the library's real game is, and Penny's like, no, seriously, this is my job. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And then Penny spots this thing bubbling off in a corner. And is just like, wait a second, what the fuck is that? And this guy tries to be like, it's none of your business. And he gets real shifty looking, but not even shifty looking like I'm trying to hide something. It's shifty looking in like he's a little ashamed. And what we find out that this is like a spell that Mayakovsky made up that is supposed to brew up like a magical current. And Penny tells the guy, it doesn't make a current, but it does blow up like a meth lab. And this dude doesn't want to hear it. And he says that this is all Mayakovsky's fault, this loss of magic. He says he made a bunch of apocalypse-proof batteries and then did something to turn all of it off all over the world. Breaks his incorporate bond, screws us, he's got magic, he's free. Tell you what Mayakovsky didn't think about. Creatures. They're fine. Whatever they are, it's DNA. And Penny says, so I hear. So, guys, is Penny a creature? Is being a traveler not quite being human? Because Penny can still travel. He can still, like, do what he used to do, which I would have thought 100% was dependent on magic. And I find it really strange that he's able to, like, all I can think is that the plot of the show depends on them somehow being able to travel from place to place. And they decided to retcon the fact that Penny isn't really a human because they need him to still function in order for what they're going to do with the story to be pulled off. Because otherwise, it's just really strange to me. Ashley says, I don't think he's a creature, but traveling is still in his DNA somehow. I mean, the thing about that, Ashley, is that wasn't he like unable to travel when he didn't have his hands? Matthew's here answering that question right away. When he didn't have his hands or control over them, he could still travel as well to some extent. Okay, because I couldn't remember how that went. All right. So Penny's like a little bit insulated from this. So, okay. I mean, that's convenient. That works. And he kind of smirks at this guy when he says that about the creatures. And this guy tries to be like, you know, oh, they're coming for us. I promise you. And then there's this crashing noise. Now, we don't ever find out what this is, what caused that. But Penny manages to bop out of his restraints. And he says, you know, creatures, some of them look like us. You never know. They're not quite human. And then he vanishes, goes to the bookshelf, picks up the book. The guy lifts his gun. Penny holds up the book and looks at him like, what? And then vanishes again. Listen, I have said before that I'm not really like a big fan of the Penny look because he is so ridiculous with his scarves and his chest showing at all times and just overall being like wannabe rock star. But I gotta say, that man can work a suit. He looked good in that. When he stood there with that book and his suit, I was just like, okay, you know what? Yes, approved. Good job. He bops off to say hi to Katie, and she's at work. She's hanging out, having a smoke, and it's clearly she's like a waitress or something because she's got like a little apron on, and they make it very clear that like time is of the essence and that he needs to go. And we find out that the reason he needs to make his trips into our world as quick as he does is because his cancer progresses while he's still in our world. When he bops back into library land, time stops. So he is able to continue on without the cancer getting any worse. But as soon as he returns to the, normal world, it all starts up again. So by the time he leaves Katie and goes back into the library, he's coughing up blood. It's bad. And I couldn't understand exactly why she was like, you need to go. She is obviously really, really happy to see him, but it's not that is not overriding everything else. That is coming second to the fact that she's very worried about him. Okay, so then we bop into Fillory. I'm saying bop because that's what it feels like right now. We're just going a lot of places to start the season off. Guys, there is a meme of this animal, and forgive me, I cannot remember what the name of it is. But it looks almost like an armadillo. And it hunches over with its little paws in front of itself. And I've seen a lot of different memes that this armadillo looks like it's about to ask a girl to prom. Or this armadillo looks like he's about to deliver his king very bad news. And that is what Tick is. Tick is the armadillo. He just stands in this hunched forward, hands clasped sort of way all the time. And it's really must be difficult to keep that up, in every scene. He must get very tired. So we find out exactly what the fuck is going on here. And I was when I saw the fairies appear at the gates, I was just what are they gonna do? Are they just straight up taking over? Because it looked to me like they still had magic. Well, they do. It's in their DNA. They're fine. So what the fairies have done is they have in essence taken over. They are not replacing, they haven't deposed the kings and queens, but they have total control over them, essentially. And we they are trying to figure out a way to communicate in which the kings and the fairies cannot tell what the kings and queens are doing. It is a really tricky thing that they try a couple times and they don't manage to get it right. So the first thing is the queen gets up. She has this rabbit that she whispers something to, she kisses it, and then she drops it into the air, and it disappears through this portal. And everybody is sort of watching her do this, but nobody seems to really know why this is happening. We see this as we also are hearing that Fillory is again dying. Because, the only thing that sort of saved them was the wellspring coming back, which was feeding their fields and their crops, and they were able to control the weather and make sure that it rained enough. And now, again, no magic. People are starving to death. It's going very badly. And there's really not a whole lot that they can do to help, they being Eliot and Margo. And Margo just has to be look, guys, every single answer we're going to give you to every single one of these questions is going to be really shitty. And I'm sorry, but you're just going to have to get used to that. Meanwhile, off in the corner, we have Fen, who is cooing over her little baby made of wood. And she has, the camera pans down to where her toes were. And all that is there is, two chunks of, toe-shaped wood. I have so many questions. First of all, is Fen, has she cracked? Or has somebody placed an illusion on that lump of wood to make it seem like a baby to her? Because I get the feeling that she cracked, but also, it's a very abrupt, this happening. Like, this progression did not come slowly and we saw her, like, beginning to break down. We just saw her having had her baby taken away while we were in Fairyland, and Margo and Josh trying to save her. And then we cut to this almost immediately, you know? The only other thing we saw was like, oh yeah, I gave her my toes so that I could come back. I have to say, I find it really weird that they decided to show her toes at all to be this like wood thing, because I really expected them to just be gone, for her feet to just sort of end in a square, the way that the witches' toes end in The Witches. Have you guys read that by Roald Dahl? The giveaway for the witches is that they have no toes, and their spit is blue and something else. But yeah, the effect of this, like, what it looks like is that she's got like a little half sock over the tip of her foot. And it doesn't really like work for me. I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I thought that they could have done better in terms of the effect overall. All I can think is that like there's some sort of weird link between the fact that her foot looks like wood and that the baby is made of wood. And I might just be inventing that. That might be nothing, you know, but I just kind of was like, what's going on over here? So Margo is given a task to go and dig up all of the earthworms. And it's a weird thing. Like, I don't really understand. First of all, this fairy queen looks a lot freakier when she's not under soft lighting, leaning back in a bathtub, luxuriating. Is that just me? It's not her makeup either. I think this woman had a few different plastic surgeries that didn't go super well. So it actually sort of works for her to be cast as this like otherworldly creature, because her face ain't right. Like, her nose is shaped not quite in concert with the way her cheekbones are shaped. Her lips are odd because I think they've been like overfilled or reworked or something. And just overall, she has a strange look to her. But what she wants is for Margo to literally collect all of the earthworms that are around the castle. And Margo is sort of like, she makes it clear that she's been sent on a lot of these tasks already. And she calls it a whimsy fest. Now, I am extremely curious as to why this fairy queen is asking for these earthworms, because it would be really easy to say, like, well, she's just making her do annoying tasks for no reason, just to torture her. Maybe. In my experience with reading about fairies, that's not how they really work, though. They tend to give people something to do that might look torturous and pointless because it's fun for them to let their victims think that it's pointless. But fairies can be weirdly practical. And I wouldn't be surprised if she was getting something out of this. Regardless, Margo decides to assign some of the random guards to dig up the worms for her, and she really thinks that she managed to pull off assigning this task without the fairies hearing about it. But the queen comes in shortly after and is just like, hey, you wouldn't have happened to ask somebody else to do the work that I gave you, would you? Because I really wanted those worms to be plucked by female hands, your hands. And Margo is very alarmed by this because she checked to make sure there were no fairies around and tried to keep her voice down. And they still knew very quickly that she had asked somebody to do this. Later on, Eliot is told by one of his advisors that there is a particular stone that the fairies are really allergic to that was dug out of the Shivering Sea. and that there's a whole wing of the castle built from this stone. Essentially, this guy is like, hey, there's somebody where you can go to get away from the fairies and they won't be able to follow you. So Eliot goes there with Margo, intending to like have a secret private talk with her. And rather than it all staying as secret as they thought, they go into the throne room and the fairy queen knows exactly what they were talking about. Because what they were saying is that all the books on poisoning were gone. They all were like purged from the library as soon as the fairies showed up. So he's thinking, well, maybe if we go to Loria, they'll have some books, and maybe they'll have some books on fairies, and we can get to learn what their weaknesses are. And they go back into the throne room, and the queen is straight up like, you weren't thinking about getting in touch with Loria, were you? Because we purged their library too. So she knows exactly what they were talking about. And he notices the eyeball that is hanging from a little like basket on her wrist. And he puts it together that the queen taking Margo's eye, that has given her the ability to like see through Margo, see what she sees, and apparently hear what she hears as well. And this, what follows is this wonderful conversation between him and Margo, where they are trying to speak only in pop culture references because they know that the fairies are listening and that they probably will not be able to follow the conversation if they aren't just, you know, if they're speaking in earthisms. I love this idea. I really, really do so much. So I'm going to read this conversation straight up, like word for word, as best I can. He says, you watched Battlestar, right? This is him trying to explain to her what's going on with her eyeball. And she says, yeah, I love when they do a terrorism allegory with mostly white people. And he says, you remember Grace Park in season 1? And she says, yeah. And she says, because she was actually, and he interrupts and says, you're Grace Park. Okay. You're Grace Park, Margo. And she totally gets it immediately and is like, fuck. Oh my God. And he says, we have got ourselves a little Gene Hackman in the conversation. And she says, I didn't see that one. I didn't either. Anybody in the chat know what he's referring to with that one? Totally all ears, really want to know. He says, yeah, right. Someone is XOXO gossip girling our shit. And remember James Marsden in X-Men? Your Marsden is XOXOing us full on that great song by the Police. And she says, that Veruza Balk in the craft. And he says, more Cersei Lannister. And she says, I'm glad I made you read those. And he sort of pauses and then says, well, I've read the wiki. And she gives him this look. And he says, what? Those books are like 1,000,000 pages long. And then goes on with, anyway, whatever your Marsden would XOXO, Cersei XOXO. So we have to keep it very best episode of Buffy. And she says, musical? And he says, the other one. What's the other one? Are we talking The Gentleman? Ashley says Hush, which is the one with the gentleman. Okay. For me, like the best episode of Buffy is The Body. So I immediately was like, what is he referencing? Because it's clearly not The Body. Yeah, so that's cool. Best episode of Buffy. She says, okay, how do we Lizzie Borden the shit out of this thing? Because I am about ready to go full 07 Britney. Now, the only problem with Lizzie Borden is that she's an actual like historical figure. So I don't know if there's some sort of loophole where the fairies could know about something like that. But if there is, they probably could know about television and stuff is still history as well. I don't know. But I'm going to just trust that the fairies have no access to like Earth intelligence. And he says maybe we could have back when this place was pottered up. And she says, still, even without a wand, Harry would figure some shit out. And he nods and then says, I didn't read those books either. And she says, our Harry, I mean. And he says, oh, him. Well, and she gives him a look and he says, consult the creepy pedophile. Now, guys, I had no idea what they were referencing here. Like, when they say our Harry, are they talking about Quentin? And in that referencing, what's his face that wrote the Fillory books? Who is the creepy pedophile, I'm assuming. But I just had like this moment of, they're calling Quentin Harry. No. Don't you dare, you sons of bitches. Absolutely not. Ashley says yes. Okay, cool. So that's what they were referencing. Yeah, no, he ain't no Harry. He ain't no Harry! Get the hell out of here. Matthew says, I knew you wouldn't agree with that. I sure don't. Guys, I appreciate a great deal that Quentin has been up in people's faces telling them what's what at the end of this last season, especially. But damn, am I tired of this guy. He is such a vibe killer. I don't know if it's just that this actor is really good at playing this role, or if the actor himself is just a vibe killer and they cast excellently knowing that this is what he's supposed to be like. But wow, it's like a superpower. Every time he's on screen, I'm just like, everybody else is so great, you know, even awful Alice is so great. But all right, so they have, what they do is then go on a quest to find the White Lady and shoot her so that they can ask for a magical wish to get the fairies booted off of their land. And Eliot goes into this not entirely like, he is doing the best that he can. This is not going to be a solution to the problem. Magic will still be gone. And there's probably going to be some weird loophole that allows them to come back. But it's the best he can do. So he's like walking around trying to find this White Lady. And eventually Tick sort of disappears on him. He can't find him. And he hears a voice off in the woods talking to him. And he raises his bow. And the voice says, not the best idea, Eliot. And he's very nervous and is like trying to be like, hey, if you don't like just come out here, I'm going to have to shoot because I don't know who you are and I can't see you and you might be a threat. Well, this dude says, have you never given a compliment before? For example, my, High King Eliot, your long legs look so well in those breeches. And Eliot pauses and looks and is like, thank you. Like, genuinely seems to be like, oh, well, you know, And then he says, your turn. And Eliot says, you sound like a very attractive creature. You think so? I've met many non-humans, and your voice is by far the sexiest. Really? I mean, you sound noble. I didn't mean... And then the trees part, and there stands the sexiest in the land. Guys, who is this dude? This is the best thing that's happened on this show. I don't know what the fucking deal is. I love it. I love it so much. This is so weird. It's so weird. What? Okay, also, is it just me, or is the actor playing the Great Cock the same actor as from the musical episode of Buffy who plays that song demon? Because he has like a really similar facial structure. They both obviously had a ton of prosthetic makeup on in those episodes. But so like they very well are not. But there is something about how high their cheekbones are, how exaggerated their like eyebrow ridges are, especially this guy with his eyebrows, that I was like, man, after them just talking about that episode, this dude is like bearing a weird resemblance to me. Yeah, this dude has the most amazing look. His eyebrows are literally 8 or 9 inches long and reach past where his hairline would normally be, except that he doesn't have regular hair. He has a mohawk that's like a fringe straight up off the top of his head. He has a goatee, and it's also very long, and then his chest is covered in feathers. And he is the great cock of the darkling woods, and he is wearing this suit that just... Guys, it is a purple, green, and gold paisley with an open chest. This is a suit that fucking Penny would love. And a giant high collar that stands up around the back of his neck. His feathers come out behind him, and he says, "Cock, have you never beheld one, son of earth?" And Eliot says, "Oh, no, I've beheld one or two, but you are by far the most majestic." And he kneels, and the cock says, "I'm diligent about hydration." I love this the most. And I love the fact that he is so about the aesthetic, because him and Eliot are going to be on the same page because of this in a lot of ways. He, for the fucking first time, I would like to say too, this is like, I love the whole concept of him being a cock. I love his look. I love his voice. I love his attitude. But what I love most of all is that he doesn't talk in fucking riddles. He tells them what to do. This is so rare. Oh my God. Can we just get more of this every now and then? I just appreciated it so much. He sits Eliot down. It's great. They're in just like this little clearing in the woods. But once Eliot sits down, it all transforms. And suddenly there is a low table and cushioned chairs and a huge chandelier drops down and music begins to play. And there's like a piping hot pot of tea. The whole thing is just so wonderful. I love it so much. And he tries to like, because Eliot's talking about how he needs help with a fairy thing. And the cock is like, "Look, you really need help with a magic thing. And I can send you on a quest to get magic back." And Eliot's like, "Okay, look. I really appreciate that. I really understand that is ultimately probably the better choice. But that is going to take a long time." He asks about how long a quest would take, and the cock says, "About a season," which... Nicely done, writers. Appreciate that. But yeah, Eliot is like, "Yeah, see, like, that's too long. The people in my land are starving. I just don't have time to do something epic because they're going to fucking die by the time I'm done with this." And the cock is like, "Look, I understand that you just want the fairies gone, but if you want to deal with that wish-giving sister, you know that shit comes with a price. You know that every time somebody gets granted a wish, they get something they didn't bargain for, and it all goes wrong. Like, you need your magic back. Won't it solve all your problems?" Like, so then he begins to explain to him, yeah, a good season. I just love that line. He begins to explain to him exactly what's going on. First of all, he says, "You're a good king," to Eliot, because he likes the fact that Eliot is so concerned about his own people that he feels this urgency. So he sort of admires this. And he says, "But it's time to become a great one. In order to do that, you must travel to a land where you are no king, no magician, just a vulnerable man." And Eliot says, "Honestly, that sounds like something I might really fuck up." And he says, "Yeah, or it wouldn't be a quest. And then he tells him how he needs all of his friends and lists them in terms. The one-eyed conqueror, Margo. The traveler, Penny. The warrior. Is that Julia? No, she's the god-touched. The warrior's Katie. The fool, that has to be Quentin. The god-touched, that's Julia. No, the fool is, the fool's not Josh, because he says the lover of tomatoes. And the torture artist. And Eliot says, wait, which one is that? I'm assuming that's Alice. But yeah, he says, you have a brother of the heart with the floppy hair. You are parts of one whole. No one can do this alone. And he explains about finding the book with no author in a public library in the Shire of Chester in a place called New Jersey. So again, guys, can I tell you how delightful it is to me that he gives him hard information? The cock gives it to him hard. Oh, Lord. So Eliot agrees to this quest, and he has to figure out a way to communicate with Quentin and get his help. And he finds out from his advisor, who I can't remember his name, but he has been coming in very handy, that the bunnies can be used to travel or can be used to send messages. Abigail. His name is Abigail? Is that really? Okay. Maybe he's talking to... Is Abigail the name of the sloth? That's the sloth, maybe? I don't know what his servant's name is. But yeah, the bunnies are not loyal to the fairy queen specifically. They can just move really easily between worlds. And he begins to use them to send messages. So the first one he sends to, I love it, to Quentin. Quentin's like asleep on the couch, laying on his back, and he sees the bunny, and it looks like it lands on the ceiling, but it's just that he's upside down. And the bunny just says, "Need help. Love, Eliot," in this really weird voice. And Quentin's like, wait, what the fuck? So it's really fun because on its face, this is weird enough, but because they think magic's gone, I'm sure this is coming as a particular shock that this is something that can still happen. I don't know how many bunnies they need to send. Like, I don't know what the capacity is for a bunny message. It seems like it's a very small, like, you know, it's not Twitter. You don't get a 280 characters now. It seems like you get a max of like 6 words maybe. But we cut to the Library of Northern New Jersey, main downtown branch. And Julia is walking out of there with a children's book that she says she feels something coming off of. And it says The Tale of the Seven Keys. She says there's no author listed. And yeah, there's an energy to it. So they open it. It's got a gorgeous cover. I really want to point out the embossed leather with the gold keys in a circle looks dope. And he opens up to the title page and the first chapter, but once they get past like the first chapter, all the pages are blank. Despite that, there are pages that like unfold quite a long way. So it seems clear that there's a map in there somehow that they need to be able to access. And Julia is frustrated by the fact that it's blank, but he's like, that's how this works. This is a quest. Of course it's going to be blank. We need to earn every single step of this. And he is super duper excited. It's really sweet, honestly, to see how invigorated they both are by being given something to fucking do. Because Lord knows we are all in that position, right? We all just need something to do. And when you don't really have like something to work towards, you might not be fully aware that you feel aimless, but I know for me, I definitely do. I need something ahead to like reach for and try towards. Right now, the thing that I'm working towards is my wedding. Giant event, going to be very expensive, requires a ton of planning, and will be a really, really exciting day for me because Owen is the best and I'm super duper lucky. He's the best. Oh, guys, you don't even know how the best he is. He's just the best. So yeah, that for me is my thing right now, is like, oh my God, I'm getting married. I got to plan the wedding. This is so fun. After the wedding, who knows? Probably doing something with our house, or changing what I'm doing with the podcast maybe, and like organizing to do something else. There's a thing. And a lot of us have our various things. Oh, I'm trying to finish school, or I'm trying to get promoted, or I'm trying to like get a job with this company, which I really admire, or I'm trying to, move out and get my own place. There's all kinds of different things. And because the two of them have been in such really insane circumstances over the past couple of years, they can't just have a normal goal that humans have. They have both been through way too much. That's not going to work. Those little goals are not going to feel like enough. They've been in life or death, end of the world type situations. So yeah, they're going to need more of a fucking goal. And I really like this moment between the two of them and how very excited the both of them looked. And this leads to this great moment of all of these bunnies being organized, where we're hearing what all of the bunnies are saying. And at this point, I should mention that Fen is like helping them out. And Fen, I really hope that you haven't entirely lost it. It seems like she kind of comes back to herself here and there. I don't know. But yeah, all the bunnies are talking together. So we're getting epic quest. We have to map from the book, work together. Also, I think, epic quest, the Great Cock. It's called After Island, the back door to the Great Cock. Yeah, some writer had a little bit of fun with that. Keys. Here's the deal. Epic quest. All 7 keys. Here's the deal. Over and over again. Until finally Eliot tells the bunnies to all please be quiet for just a second. And they do, actually. They all quiet down right away and are listening for him. And he is choosing who to go through the little portal first. Meanwhile, Fen is off in the corner, and she's nuzzling a bunny and saying, "Your father and I are so proud of you." So I guess when I think about it, that really like puts an arrow through my theory that the wood was enchanted, because she could just see this baby anywhere, It's sort of precious. Honestly, the bunny's better. At least it's less creepy. She's talking to a living thing that's adorable, like it's a baby. What human being has not done that? Honestly. But I feel so bad for her. So Quentin, is writing all of this out. And I love his assistant who's like, "You're a brave king." And he's like, "I don't have a lot of choice, but thank you for rounding up." And he says, "Q and Julia believe whatever the keys unlock will help restore magic. They think the first key is here in Fillory, some place called After Island." And this dude is like, "Oh boy, bad news. It's outside the borders of your own land, so you're going to be going somewhere weird that you don't own. Also, the outer sea itself wishes ill upon our king. So some people who have tried to go before you, they all drowned." And he says, "How do we prevent that?" And he says, "I wish I knew, if only," and then Fen interrupts and says, I know exactly the boat you need." And she comes up and is like, again, kind of back to herself, and seems to be, I just don't know. I do not know what to make of what Fen is going through. And also, I am not entirely... Fen is also affected by the fairies. They took her toes. I don't know that there isn't something about Fen that is compromised. You know, like it's not an eye. I don't know if it matters. Can Fen be like a foot soldier? Is that like a literal sort of like a pun kind of thing? Can she be somebody who like, I don't know. I'm concerned that without even knowing it, she could be leading them down the wrong path because she's like really owned by the fairies a little bit at this point. I don't know, just a theory. So then we go to this scene with Alice, and it's a weird thing. She's in an alley, and there is a vampire sucking blood from her wrist. Now, I'm going to bounce back a little bit because we have this moment at the party with, you know what I forgot to mention? I forgot to talk about Katie, because she gets a visit from that fuzzbeat woman, and she's a little annoyed that Katie hasn't responded to her texts. And Katie is like, yeah, I didn't think there was a point in responding because you can't help Penny anymore. And this lady says, well, this is a book that you do need magic for, so you might want to get on that. But I think that it could really help Penny. And when Katie's sort of like, there's no magic, fat chance, she sort of treats Katie like, come on, you're not that naive, right? You really think all magic is just gone? You really didn't think anyone saw this coming at all? And she says, for Penny's sake, go find out, and gives her the book. And I am assuming that this is something to do with Mayakovsky also. But again, I don't know what that looks like, because there is a meeting that Dean Fogg has with a woman named Iris, I think is her name. And she is talking to him about how all of these magical businesses have gone under, and like they both had stock in them. So they're both like out a lot of money. But then she says that the board is convinced that magic is still out there and wants Breakbills to focus on finding it. And the dean is like, we're at school. That's what we're going to do. We're going to teach. And she's like, look, buddy, that's all well and good, but they'll fucking close the school down. If there's no magic, they don't see the point. Like, you need to fucking give them something. And he mentions that they searched Breakbills South and that they didn't find anything. He doesn't say anything about Mayakovsky. I'm assuming Mayakovsky bailed, right? Like, he had been in prison there. Of course he would go. And if he bailed, he took his batteries with him. I do not know how much of these batteries got used up in bringing Alice back to life, because he used them in that ritual. I don't know if it was like, I guess he had some backups. I don't know. But whatever the case, he did see this coming somehow. And Feedbuzz woman is, she seems to have a sense of that. I don't know. But she says, yeah, you better save Penny so you can pay me back for all of the trouble that I went through to get you that. And we see Katie like leafing through this book, but we don't get any details about what it says in there or anything. So that party where Quentin has this like vision, because Bacchus puts a pill on his tongue. He has a flashback to Alice leaving the school. And she says, I can't study dead magic. I can't do this. And he asks her if they can go sit down and talk about it. And she says, here's the deal. I thought if we hung out, maybe had sex, went to school, it would feel like it did. I thought I could forgive you, but I can't. I just say goodbye and let me go. And she leaves. Now, I've been saying I felt like him bringing her back when that was not what she seemed to want was kind of unforgivable. Whether or not he was like, yeah, but she isn't her full self right now, and she wouldn't say that if she... You don't get to decide that, dude. I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't matter what you think she would do. The part of her you've got is telling you a thing, and this is just... You've got to let it go. But he goes and does it anyway, and I think he's kind of getting what he deserves here. He wanted her back to life. he claimed. But that's not really it, is it? He wanted his relationship with her back. You don't get to decide that. You know, you got her back to life. You got that part. You got to fucking sit back and let what happen then. And if she doesn't want to be with you, I mean, y'all's relationship had pretty much imploded before she died anyway. So, yeah, I really feel like Quentin is just very selfish a lot of the time, but he manages to rationalize it to himself that he's not being selfish, because overall the thing that he wants that's buried somewhere underneath is masked by doing a good thing, and he convinces himself that's all it is. And it's like, he's just not totally honest with himself or anybody else about what is really behind his motivations for things, you know? So when we, and also Julia does a little demo of the bit of magic she can do for Josh in order to cheer him up. And Quentin gets a little agitated at that, but she's like, Josh is telling her about how basically his entire sense of identity and sense of self has fallen apart because magic is gone. Because without it, he's just like a really ordinary nothing dude. And magic was something that like gave him access to everything in the world. He was really good at it. He had a gift. And without it, it's just he genuinely doesn't know what to fucking do with himself. And I could see that. I mean, magic is just like a stand-in for any of us having a particular skill of any kind. You know? What if I lost my voice entirely and couldn't do this? I guess I could write? Ugh. Tedious. Like, my sense of self would crumble. I wouldn't even know who I was anymore. When you separate me from what I do, which is so much a part of who I am, I don't even know what I would fucking, you know, like, so I really liked that scene. I liked the in-depth look at what it means for a lot of people whose lives revolved around magic. Like with Quentin and Julia, they both love magic, but they both also were deeply hurt by it. A lot of the time it went badly, and Quentin even considered completely giving it up because he found it to be so toxic. So with them, it feels a little different for magic to be gone. There's a part of me that's almost like, this is for your own good, kids. And I appreciated being shown a character for whom it really didn't have that kind of like baggage associated with it, because it made me go, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, as much as it's awful for a lot of people who like just kind of spin out of control, not everybody has that experience. And if they have organized their lives, livelihoods, whatever around it, this is going to be absolutely devastating in a different way. This isn't just like a hobby that disappeared. This is everything. So anyway, back to Alice. She is getting her wrist sucked by some fucking vampire in an alley. And she finally like pushes him off her because he's really starting to go a little too long. And she says, all right, that's it. Let's talk. And he says, so transactional. What do you want with a lamprey anyway? And she says, it's more what the lamprey wants with me. And he laughs and says, oh shit, you poked the wrong bear, sweetness. And I love this vampire. He is really good at being a fucking creep. I love this. Like, there's such a stereotype of vampires being like really sexy and alluring. But what if they had that energy except in a really like sleazy way? And this guy embodies that. He feels really threatening also in a way that's familiar, rather than just like, oh, I'm a monster that could kill you. He's like, no, I'm just a guy who could really hurt you. And like, just fucking creeped me out. So finally he says, well, if you could do magic. And she says, yeah, well, I can't. So he says, so you're down to an early warning device, an alarm, so that just maybe you still have time to run. And she's like, all right, fine, I'll take it. And he holds up his phone and shows her something. And she says, "Is that a joke?" And he says, "I gave up jokes 80 years ago, tired of being misunderstood. So get one and keep it on your person at all times. Buena suerte." I do not know what he showed her, but I am dying to know. Like, what is that even? What could it be? Got nothing. And then we see her and she goes to a diner and she asks for just a side of bacon. And it was a really sweet, sad moment, you know, like she wants things clearly to be the way that they were also. It seems like she misses the simplicity of her life now that she's back to being a human and has to live like this. She was trying to make the best of it, but she can't get past what Quentin did. Nevertheless, this feeling of like clinging to that moment that she had with him and the bacon, I thought that was really sweet. I like that a lot. And it's a really sad moment too. They present her with this plate and the bacon does not look good. It's just like a sort of sad replacement for the thing that she had had before. It's just depressing, but I thought it was really well done. So that is the end of the episode. All right. Well, thank you again very much to all of you for coming and hanging out with me. Thank you again to Ashley for commissioning this episode. And I hope that you all are enjoying the show. I'm really excited to be starting season 3. How many seasons are out so far? Is this the last season that's like available? I think it is, right? So there are 4 available. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So guys, I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.